Hi everyone, this is Luxtos, and today I'm bringing you yet another video guide. We'll be covering macros. So, this is going to be a live rambling video about macros. I'm going to show you my favorite one, the one I use, and how to build your own. So, let's get started. There you go. So the first one I'm going to show you is like, for example, between the eye or any stuns, any CC that you want to use. Every single macro that I do start with show tooltip. So you simply hit $, show tooltip, and this is going to show the active tooltip in the macro. By tooltip, I mean icon, and also if you mouse over, it's going to let you know which spell is going to be cast, or items, or potions, or talent, or whatever you put in your macro. So this is a very important step. Always put show tooltip in the first line. Then we're going to do a simple cast function. So before we get into a complicated one like this one, we're just going to, let's just create a new one. Why not? Why not? Okay. We're going to enter slash, not slash, but number show tooltip. And we're going to do slash cast. Okay. Let's do slash cast mutilate. There you go. Save. Okay. Put that in here. It's going to do what you think it's going to do, right? It's going to cast mutilate. Okay. First macro done. This is going to be it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Just kidding. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's make this a little more complicated. So we're going to add what we call modifier. Modifier are made using bracket. You can add property in here. You can add target. Specifier, you can add modifier. Modifier are based on key, so I can do mod alt. What this is going to do is this is going to activate this portion of the sequence only when you press alt on your keyboard. So if I do this and then I separate it with a semicolon, so this is a semicolon. This is very small, but I'm telling you, and I'm going to put these the important one in the description. So this is a semicolon, and we're going to separate it with another sequence. So we're going to do mod shift, because why not? So if you do mod shift, instead of casting mutilate, I want to cast rupture. Why not? We're going to separate it with another semicolon, and this one is just going to cast by default Garrett. Okay, save. There you go. So right now, it's showing me the icon for Garrett. And that's because I'm not pressing any key on my keyboard. Okay? So if I press Alt, it's going to switch to Mutilate. If I press Shift, it's going to switch to Rupture. So you can use this button to do 3 spells at once. Right now, my Alt 1 is not going to be working because it's binded somewhere else. So you need to make sure that this is going to be the case for your macro. You need to make sure that the binding is available. Right now, this macro is not useful at all. Don't do this. I'm just showing you how to use those. Okay. So we're gonna go a little further. Let's do, for example, something actually useful like kidney shot. Okay. So kidney shot, and then so I want to cast kidney shot, but if I press Alt, I want my spell to cast on my focus target, let's say. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to cast Kidney Shot by default. And if I press Alt, I want to cast it on my focus. So what I did is I did between square brackets, I did mod Alt, comma, space, at focus. You can do at target, at focus, at player, at mouse over. You can do a lot of things in here. So this is a basic guide right now for DPS. So this is going to be a very useful macro for DPS. And this is the macro that I'm currently using over here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one and show you. This is the exact same thing. So mod alt, focus, kidney shot, kidney shot. Very straightforward. I'm using it right here. I'm going to show you what it does. So I can focus this target. And the way that I did this is I have a binding set up for focusing my targets. I'm just going to show you right now. So you can go in targeting, and I have this, which is an extra button on my mouse, and focus target, pretty much. So If I click it and I press it, it puts it on focus. So that means that I can attack this target right here and kidney shot this one without losing my current target. This is going to be useful for also blind, for example. So I can do the exact same thing with blind, and I can do that with kick. I can do that with any of my ability that I want to be able to use on a different target. Okay, so these are very, very useful. I don't really recommend using these macro with mouse over, because mouse over, even though you think you can use it properly, it's going to be very hard to mouse over on these kind of bindings. You could mess up something, and it could cost you a lot. So this is very useful in PvP and even PvE. You can, if you have two mobs, you're trying to DPS one, and there is one that you need to watch for kicks and interrupts. Well, you can simply right-click it. So you go into pulling, and you all say, okay, so this one is going to be skull, and you need to make sure that you interrupt square. Okay, cool. I'll put square in focus. So I'll just go into the fight. I'll put square in focus, and we're gonna DPS this guy over here. Just let me put some poison on, so I actually do any damage. And there you go. You can start DPSing this target. And oh, he's casting. Kick him. There you go. Kidney shot. There you go. And I'm not leaving my main target. This is macros are very powerful for this. So this is gonna help you out with your gameplay, both in PvE and PvP. So this is a very basic macro system, and I'm using one with a mouse over for Shadow Step. And the reason that I'm using a mouse over for Shadow Step is I'm using Shadow Step a lot for movement on my ally. So for example, if I'm currently fighting something and I don't know, something is happening like over here or something, I can simply Shadow Step my mouse over. I'm still targeting the dummy, but I'm now over here because I simply clicked on my macro to Shadow Step my mouse over target. So that's very, very useful. Just for that, I'm going to go subtlety because I have 2 charges of Shadow Step. That's going to be a little easier. There you go. So you can do the exact same process. You can do that on enemy. You just can move around so quickly and efficiently, especially as a rogue. Of course, some other classes are going to have different type of movement, and those are going to require maybe some different macros. But for rogue, these are really my favorite ones. Okay, so let's check this one out. So this one is a Stealth Vanish. Well, it's called Stealth Vanish, but it's actually just Stealth and Shroud of Concealment. So the reason that I did this, just going to show you my action bar. Okay, I'm hiding some stuff in here. This is just so that it doesn't. Basically, what I'm using is the pounce, not the pounce, sorry, the ash or the number keybind right now is used for every single stealth. So if I press the number key, I go into stealth. There you go. If I press it again, I go out. If I press Alt and number, I vanish. But if I press Shift and I use the number key, I use Shroud of Concealment. So the way I do things, I'm gonna make a separate video on key bindings. But normally, what I do is a key as to so every time that I think about the number key, I think about stealth. All the three stealth abilities for rogue are going to be binded around this key. So it's easier to remember. It's easier to learn it. That's for sure. At one point, it become muscle memory, and it's not really relevant anymore. But when you're starting to play a class, it's really good to have some kind of, not synergy, but just logic between your key bindings. So that's why I did this. So this is very easy for me to remember, and it allows me to save some keybind spacing. I did the exact same thing for, currently I'm subtlety. So this is going to be my AoE. So I'm putting both of my big AoE for subtlety in the same macro. So if right now my Fan of Knife and Shuriken Storm are on scroll down. So every time that I scroll down, I do a Fan of Knife or a Shuriken Storm. And if I press, of course, I need the talent, so Shuriken Tornado. If I press Alt and scroll down, I'm gonna do my bigger AoE if you want so. So it's gonna be The exact same thing for Assassination. So what I did is that scroll down is Fan of Knife. There you go. And Alt scroll down is Crimson Tempest. So right now I don't have any combo point, but yeah. There you go. So this is a way for me to keep things a little bit more logic. So I'm putting them in the same macro. This way it's I'm saving space and it's helping me remember where things are. So this is very easy. Simply do exactly what I showed you earlier. Mod Alt and put the second spell in. Okay, let's do it. Let's go into something a little bit more complicated. Okay, so example. Right now in Assassination, you have a row, which is your 6th row, that has 2 activate ability. So you have Toxic Blade and Exsanguinate. There is no reason to have these 2 spells on 2 different keybinds. They're almost the exact same thing. They're going to be a rotational cooldown that you press every once in a while during your DPS rotation. So for me, it's button 5 because for me, 1 to 4 are more easily reach. So they're going to be button that I usually spam a lot more during a fight. And the 5th one is something that I can... It's not too stretch far, and I can use it for longer cooldown, a little bit rotational ability. So my number 5 is going to be Exsanguinate and Toxic Blade. And to prevent myself from every single time, so for example, when I do PvP, I sometimes use Exsanguinate. And then I go into PvE situation and click Toxic Blade. I have to drag it, put it down here, and there you go. And then, oh fuck, I forgot to put it in my stealth bar. There you go. And then I go to Toxic. Okay, what's going on? You know, it's painful. It's painful. It's not a good thing. So we're gonna do a macro for that. Okay. So we're gonna remove the trinket for now. We're gonna keep it simple. So right now I'm just naming my macro S1R6. This is spec 1, spec number 1, number 2, number 3. So this is spec 1, row 6. Very straightforward. And then we're going to do a condition. So we're going to do brackets, square brackets, just like I showed you. And we're going to type talent and then colon. And again, we're going to type the row slash the talent. Pretty straightforward. So what I want to do is I want to cast whenever my 6th row, 2nd talent is Toxic Blade, I want to cast Toxic Blade. Whenever my 6th row talent is the number 3, Exsanguinate, I want to cast Exsanguinate. It's straightforward. So let's just type it from scratch just to show you guys. So you just cast square bracket talent, comma, row 6, talent number 2. I want to cast Toxic Blade. There you go. You can just shift click on an ability. It's going to go right into the macro. Semicolon, do the brackets again. Talent, colon, row 6, talent number 3. I want to cast Exsanguinate. You save, put that in here. Make sure you put that also in your stealth bar if you're a rogue. And there you go. So I'm doing PvP. I have Exsanguinate. There you go. I can use the ability. Everything is fine. I want to switch to PvE. I simply click Toxic Blade. There you go. Toxic Blade is updated. Of course, if you pick a non-active ability, the macro is simply not going to show anything. What I do is I put use 13 and use 14. You don't have to do that. And this is simply using your item slot. So these 2 item slots are considered 13 and 14. So if you do /use on both of them, it's going to attempt to use any of these trinket slots. So that means that every time I press Toxic Blade, this trinket is going to activate. There you go. Trinket is activated. And this also means that if I pick Venom Rush, well, this is the cool thing. This is the cool thing. Since this condition is never going to be true because I picked the talent number 1, then it's going to just show me the timer for your trinket, which is pretty nice. I think that's pretty nice. So this is one macro that I really like to do. We're going to go into a little more complicated. It's actually not that bad. So this is my cooldown macro. This is my cooldown for every single spec in the game in one macro. How nice is that? Instead of having 3 macro for Vendetta, Adrenaline Rush, and Shadow Blade, because I always want to pair those with a potion of Prolonged Power or whatever we're going to use. So in this expansion, the potions are still too pricey, so I'm still using the Legion potion, but you get the point. So it's simply going to be a modifier, well, not a modifier, but a condition called spec:1. So let's make this macro from scratch, just to show you. /cast, very easy. Square brackets, spec:1. So just like I showed you, spec number 1 is assassination. Okay. What do you want to cast as assassination on your main cooldown? It's going to be Vendetta. There you go. Semicolon, spec number 2. So spec:2, space, Outlaw. What's Outlaw cooldown? Adrenaline Rush. There you go. Semicolon, bracket, spec:3. That's for Subtlety. The cooldown for Subtlety is Shadow Blade. I don't know why it's not there, but Shadow Blades. There you go. /use, and we're just gonna add some potion in here. So you just need to open your bags. There you go, and you can just shift click your potion. There you go, and it's gonna go right in there. Save. Okay. If I switch spec, let's just go Outlaw, for example. There you go. So Outlaw, I'm using macro. I can do this. There you go. It's now casting. It's the same macro, but it now knows that I'm in spec number 2, and he's going the macro. It's gonna cast Adrenaline Rush for me. So that's gonna be very useful. Okay. What next? What can I show you next? I'm also using a macro for distract. Oh, I don't have it right now. Okay, so let's make one. Let's make one. So every time that you cast distract, you have to click it, and then you have to position your cursor to know where you want to distract. So you have to click it, and you have to do 2 separate moves. You also have to do this exact same process for Grappling Hook. So when you click the spell, you have to place your Reticle. This is the same thing for Heroic Leap and Infernal Strike, I think, for Demon Hunter. So every time that you want to move somewhere, you need to click the ability, and then you need to click where you need to go. How awesome would that be if you could only click once instead of having to click with your mouse? Well, you can do that. And that's this macro. So we're going to do it from scratch. It's just, instead of being at player or at focus, it's at cursor. It's that simple. /cast, bracket, at, which is the at symbol, and cursor. There you go. And then you press whatever spell you want. So Grappling Hook, shift click it, save. There you go. For me, it's for Grappling Hook, it's mouse scroll wheel up. So there you go. Instead of having to click every time I want a Grappling Hook, I can just simply do that, which saves me a lot of time. You just need to be wary that you have this macro so that you don't accidentally Grappling Hook somewhere you don't want to go. So I'm using a lot of other macros. So for Tricks of the Trade, whenever I'm in a dungeon, I usually focus my tank, and then all I have to do is press Alt, and that's going to do Tricks of the Trade on my main tank. So that's good. I'm using, so Focus Sap, that's very easy. I'm using a Sap macro for player. So what this does is it attempts to clear target. So if you have something selected and you press it, let's do that. So if you have something selected and you press it, it's gonna clear target. It's gonna remove it, and then it's gonna try to target an enemy player and cast Sap. What this does, it's a very useful macro for PvP. Is that when there is player near you, you can spam this macro, and it's gonna shuffle through every single target around you. This is very helpful to find rogue player, because when they're stealth, they will enter near your vision, the circle of vision, and you'll see them for a fraction of a second. And if you spam hard enough this macro, you're going to be able to sap them before they can sap you, if they're not using it, of course. And then it's pretty much all going to be server lag, luck, and whatever else you guys want to blame it on. So I'm using a lot of different macros for a lot of different stuff. So instead of having a Killing Spree macro and a Blade Rush macro, I just put them all in one. So 7th row, 2nd, and 3rd talent. Very easy to do. I don't think I have any more macro that I can show you that are very different from these. So I think that's pretty much it for macro, right? So I'm using some basic macro. This one is a clean action bar macro. I'm going to put it in the comment below. I didn't write this, but it's very useful if you want to start leveling an alt that you started like 5 years ago and your bar are all messed up. Instead of dragging every single action bar, you put this in here, you click it, it's going to wipe all your bars. So I'm going to give that to you, and all the others macro right there are for add-ons, some add-ons that I'm using. So I think that's pretty much it for macro. I hope this was helpful. So this is a very short, well, I think it was pretty long, but it's a rambling video. So I hope you like these kinds of video, and I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you let me know which macro you would like, and maybe I can help you out with that. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Come visit me on Twitch. Drop a follow. I always appreciate it. And until then, see you in the next video, guys.